Welcome to my podcast, Chaotic Harmony. I am your host, Angela Schultz. Have you ever heard of a true crime junkie? If you haven't, well, please let me fill you in. A true crime junkie is a person who is obsessed with true crime and wants to learn as much as they possibly can about it. A true crime junkie may listen to many different podcasts, watch all kinds of documentaries, and read or listen to many different audiobooks. All of that is done because the true crime junkie craves more of information. Based on that definition that I just gave you, I can safely admit that I am 100% a true crime junkie. I'm not sure if there is a documentary that was published about true crime that I haven't seen. Literally. I'm not embarrassed to admit to y'all that I watch court TV on the daily. More like listening to it, but either way. And I fall asleep to shows like Snapped, Homicide Hunter, Evil Lives Here, and so on. Homicide Hunter? That tends to be my favorite. Anyway, watching what happens from the very beginning of a crime all the way to the final jury's decision fascinates me. Science has developed tremendously over the years, making it easier to provide evidence. Evidence that a bullet was shot from a certain gun. Evidence that a blood splatter pattern can prove the person committing the crime was standing in a certain position. Proof that the crime scene was cleaned up simply by spraying a chemical called luminol all over the place and turning on a blue light. Let's not forget about the big one, DNA. Science has made so many things possible. So why can't science help me understand my gift? Many people around the world share the same gift as me. However, none of it can be scientifically proven. I guess it goes beyond the scope of science. So does that mean everything that I have experienced because of my gift isn't true? Absolutely fucking not. Everyone is allowed to have their own opinions and beliefs. I will throw that out there. That's just what makes life interesting, right? I grew up, most of my childhood anyways, in a farmhouse that was built in the early 1900s. It was surrounded by large, beautiful trees, lilac bushes all over the place, tiger lilies, and some farmland. In addition to that, it had a small detached garage, small barn, a silo, and a few old buildings that were located near the barn. Our house had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a small bathroom on the main floor. The second floor had 3 additional bedrooms and a bathroom. That second floor, that was where my siblings and I stayed. That was our floor. My bedroom was the largest room on the second floor. If I opened the door near the head of my waterbed, I could smell lilacs for days. Those lilac bushes were right under my window. The other windows in my room were so close to those beautiful trees that if I opened the windows up, I could just reach out and grab the branches if I wanted to. Nighttime seemed to be my worst enemy when I lived in that house. Even though I lived there and knew every corner of that house, including which steps made the most noise as we stepped onto them, or which floorboard was the squeakiest of all, the smallest noise that was made while I was laying in bed would keep me up all night. Whenever I brought it up the following morning, I was told the noise I heard was just the house settling. Come on, lady! I was young. What the heck was the house settling on? Like, what? Are we going to pay the bills? Like, what was it settling on? And also, how the hell was I supposed to know what the hell that meant? The shadows that covered my walls at night didn't exactly help me out either. I knew we had a light pole in our yard outside that turned on right before dark. I also knew that it was near the trees that were close to my bedroom. But for some reason, once those shadows of those tree branches danced on my walls, I would forget about all of that information. All logic was thrown out the window, and I would hide under my covers as if those shadows were there to simply attack me. Every single branch seemed to look like a monster. I was young, okay? Windy nights, yeah, those are the worst. The branches would scrape against the windows and all the shadows moved all over the place. It was no fun for my parents either. Only because I complained a lot. Because I continuously made my parents aware of my fears and all the screeching noises that I heard at night, and all the shadows as well, that always seemed to manage to look like they were kidnappers trying to come get me, I wasn't exactly taken too seriously on just about everything. Now, I don't blame them now. I was constantly bothering them at night. One night, I actually walked into their room and saw them naked. So yeah, now that I'm a parent, I can totally understand my parents a little bit more. And I just want to throw this out there. I sometimes wonder if seeing my parents naked is why I'm blind as a bat without my glasses. Little did I know, all of those things I was scared about at the ages of like 5 through 10 would seem like peanuts compared to what our house had in store for me as I got older. One weekend, my brother, sister, and I played a very innocent game of hide and seek. Now, I am a sore loser and a sore winner. Anyone that has ever played any game with me, even to this day, already knows this. Sorry, not sorry, I guess. Our farmhouse was full of great hiding places. I always went for the hardest places, or the places my siblings were always terrified to even go near. Now, that particular day, I chose the room that was hidden in my brother's closet. It was kind of like a closet within a closet, and that's like the best way I can describe it. Us kids, we were all scared of that place. Speaking for myself, I was scared of it because it didn't make sense to me, and it gave off some weird fucking vibes. I mean, why the hell did a closet, like a walk-in closet, have another door that led to another closet or room or whatever you want to call it that seemed to look and feel like a hidden room? I mean, what was this secret room used for in the early 1900s? Because I got no answers to my questions, this secret mystery room became even more creepy to all of us kids. The room was about the size of an average bathroom these days. I had absolutely no windows, no light fixtures, no source of electricity, but hear me out. The house was literally built in the early 1900s. There was barely any electricity at all, and no vents for heat in that room. My mother used that mystery room to store our bedding and, well, whatever else she needed out of sight and out of mind. My brother barely used his closet because of that mystery room. He just kept his closet door shut, and his clothes, well, they covered the floor instead. Like most boys these days anyway. All of that information, or lack of information, made the mystery room a great hiding spot. As soon as my brother shoved his face into the couch cushion and started his countdown, my sister and I split off very quickly into different directions to hide. My sister always picked the easy spots. But me, I had to win. It's just the way I am. My brother yelled out the number 2, and I quickly dashed up our staircase, tiptoeing around each step that I knew would make noise. But once I got to that second floor landing, I darted towards his room with some hesitation. But fuck it, I needed to win. I opened his closet door very quietly and walked into it extremely slowly and with caution. I shut his closet door and reached for that mystery door handle. I wasn't sure I wanted to go in there and, I could just hid in his closet, but come on, I needed to win. So I sucked up all the courage I had and entered that room. I covered myself up with some of our bed sheets to blend in just a little bit more, It's not scary enough for my brother. I'll just pop out. Ah! And then I stared down at the bottom of the door, waiting for my brother's feet to appear on the other side. I could hear my brother and sister in the distance as they walked together to search for me. Now, I already knew I had won at that point because they were together looking for me. I could have just walked out of that damn room and declared victory. But what's the fun in that? If I had to be in that room, they at least had to open that door and find me. I was in it to win it. Once I noticed my siblings' voices getting closer to my hiding spot, I decided to hide myself just a little bit more. I mean, why not? I took the sheets that were covering me up off and placed them to the side. I went to grab the comforter that was near me to cover up with and very quickly saw that I was not the only one in that mystery room. In the left corner of the room, near the door, stood a young man. I wanted to scream off the top of my fucking lungs, but I couldn't. I tried moving my body so I could run out of the hiding spot and surrender. Fuck winning. I wanted out. But again, I couldn't. All I could do was hold on to that comforter that I was going to cover up with and stare at the young man that appeared out of nowhere. I thought, maybe if I blinked my eyes a few times, the man would leave. My mother always told me it was all in my head whenever I told her about things that I heard or saw at night. This had to be one of those moments my mom was talking about. It had to be my imagination. I blinked my eyes as much as I possibly could, but nothing changed. The young man that was in the room with me just stood there, not saying a damn thing, but staring at me. He didn't look like anyone I knew. In fact, he was dressed like he was from a completely different era. It was almost as if he came from my mother's favorite show, Little House on a Prairie. He appeared to be very dirty, in need of a haircut and a good shave, and looked to be just as confused as I was. All of me wanted to be scared of him and the whole situation, but instead I found myself full of curiosity. I was no longer scared. Was my mind messing with me, or was I really looking at a freaking ghost? Because there's no way I knew this man. There's no way he got in there while I was just throwing the sheets to the side. My siblings' voices got even closer to where I was. They were in my brother's room, searching all over the place for me. I didn't want to be found anymore. I wanted to ask the young man standing in the corner of the mystery room a million questions. But as my brother swung the door open, the young man disappeared, leaving me completely clueless. I walked out of that room, went straight to my bedroom, ignoring all of my brother's haha I found you's crap, and laid in my bed. wondering if I should tell someone about what I saw or act like nothing happened at all. I chose to not make an ass of myself. Who would believe me, anyways, right? Not too long after I saw my first ghost, my parents worked out a deal with the Amish people that lived by us and decided to remodel our house just a little bit. All of the sounds I used to complain about when I was younger got worse. Once construction started, the feeling I got whenever I walked into the house had changed. It's hard to explain, but the house was giving off a confused or kind of sad energy. It wasn't the comforting kind of energy I was used to whenever I walked in there. I also had to switch rooms with my brother during this time because he quickly became even more afraid of the closet in his room. He never said why. He just said he didn't want to be in there anymore. But I never really told him about my experience, so I was always curious about that. Something just didn't seem right about our house. I talked to my friends about everything, hoping I wouldn't get picked on. And, well, that's where the idea of playing the Ouija board in my room came about. I never took the Ouija board seriously. I always felt like one of us girls was just moving the thing around on purpose, just to scare all of us. I mean, we played the Ouija board so much, it honestly, it felt like a joke. But the night we played it in my room, that was unexplainable. We lit some candles up and placed them around my room. The windows in my room were completely shut. Well, they were old, so they were always shut due to their condition. I mean, if I opened it up, it'd probably break right open. And my bedroom door was shut, leaving absolutely no room for any, like airflow or anything like that. The girls and I laid on the floor and were super focused in on our Ouija board as we asked all kinds of questions. Once we asked who was in the house, a few candles had fallen over by themselves. And I swear, no one was near these candles, and there was no airflow, like I said before. My best friend screamed bloody murder. All of this is happening. She jumped onto my bed and began crying profusely. She claimed she felt something very cold touch her shoulder after we had asked if someone was in our house. Well, safe to say that was the end of my sleepover. Everyone that was supposed to spend the night at my house left. But I wasn't upset about that. I actually felt like I had gotten some kind of confirmation. My house was haunted, and I was not going crazy. It felt kind of good. Then shortly after all of the remodels were done to our house, my parents went out and bought a new truck to go with the new 3-stall garage that was built. My brother and I asked our mother if we could turn the radio on in the new truck and goof around in it. She was too busy watching her favorite show, so she just waved us off, which meant to us, sure, whatever, I don't care. I didn't really know if she ever heard what we ever had asked her, but whatever. I do that to my kids now as a parent, and it gets me in trouble sometimes. I got myself behind the wheel of our new truck, and my brother jumped into the bed of the truck. Once I found a good song on the radio, I cranked that volume up and started jamming to the music. My brother also started jamming. He was jumping around the bed of the truck while he sang along to the music. He was literally jumping around so much that the whole truck started shaking from side to side. I had adjusted all of the mirrors to my liking, just because I could, and pretended I was driving the whole time you're listening to the radio. Every once in a while, I would glance up at my brother through the rearview mirror and laugh at him as he threw his body all over the place. Honestly, he looked like an idiot, but it was funny. And then I would go back to channel surfing the radio for the other right song to listen to, and acted like I owned that goddamn truck. After a few songs had played, I yelled out to my brother. I wanted to know if he wanted to switch spots with me. Instead of doing the obvious and turning the volume down on the radio, I just adjusted the rearview mirror around a little bit because I didn't hear him respond back to me when I yelled out his name. The truck was still moving around as if he were still in the back of it. I never once heard or saw my brother climb out of the truck. So what the hell is going on? He was known to pull a few pranks on me, so I assumed he was messing around with me and went back to my fake driving. Fuck it, he don't want to switch and whatever else. I didn't care. But something just didn't feel right though. It felt like someone was staring at me. Maybe my brother. I had to check. I slowly looked into the rearview mirror, and what I saw in that mirror was not my brother. It was a young man that looked like he belonged in a goddamn Western movie. He was wearing the full-blown cowboy hat, belt with a gun holder, and boots. This man was jumping around just like my brother was. Almost as if he was mocking my brother's every move. I couldn't wrap my brain around any of it. All I could do at that moment was stare into the rearview mirror and question my sanity. Within a few seconds of watching the young man's every move, the song of the radio came to an end. The young man stopped jumping around all over the place and finally made eye contact with me. Instantly, a very cold chill went through my entire body. I felt like I couldn't move. The young man slowly walked closer and closer to the cab of the truck, never once breaking eye contact with me. He then bent down just enough to fill the rearview mirror with his entire face. He slowly lifted his left pointer finger up and placed it against his lips, just as he was about to whisper, "Shh." My brother made his grand entrance back into the garage by swinging the door open hard enough to hit the garage wall and cause a loud bang. I instantly broke off that intense eye contact I had with the man in the back of the truck and looked at my brother's direction. Why do you look like you just saw a ghost or something? My brother said. I didn't give myself a chance to answer his question. Instead, I quickly looked back into the rearview mirror so I could show my brother why I looked the way I did. But all I saw in the damn mirror was nothing. An empty bed of my parents' truck. That's it. I hopped out of the truck in disbelief and rushed to the back just to get a better look. Maybe the guy was hiding. But sure enough, there was nobody there. I wasn't sure how to process what I had just experienced, so, I went along with whatever my emotions needed at the time. And that was not pretty. I ran out of that garage screaming, "I just saw a ghost!" and hid under my blankets until I cried myself to sleep. My brother didn't see anything in the truck that afternoon, so once again, when I told people, I wasn't taken seriously. That didn't change how I felt about it then, and it sure as hell doesn't change how I feel about it now. I knew what I saw. As I got older, I had slowly come to the realization that not everyone was going to believe my ghost stories. Fun fact, if you tell the wrong person about your ability in seeing the dead, you will get laughed at, or even better, mocked. This is what I learned anyways. There's only one person I felt comfortable sharing any of my experiences with. and that happened to be my grandma. My grandma they called Red. She never once laughed at me whenever I told her a story. She never made me feel like I was crazy or I was some sort of freak. Instead, she shared a few stories with me so I wouldn't feel so alone. Grandma firmly believed I inherited a gift. You heard me. Inherited. A gift her father, my great grandpa, had as well. One story my grandma told me that stuck with me about her father was he had woken up in the middle of the night by his sister, who was standing near his bedside. His sister looked scared and sad as she stood there. She told my great-grandpa he needed to go to the post office right away in the morning because there was going to be a telegram waiting for him. The telegram was going to be informing him of her death. My grandma told me that the following morning, while her family sat around the kitchen table eating breakfast, her father shared his experience from the night before. According to my grandma, her father needed to see if he was going crazy like I felt. So he drove to the post office as soon as he could just to see if it was waiting for him. My grandma tagged along for shits and giggles, she told me. My grandma told me that when her father walked out of the post office with a telegram in his hands, his whole body was shaking. And sure shit, the telegram that he was holding on to was indeed about the death of his sister that he had saw the night before. I personally don't think he was going crazy. After Grandma told me that story, along with a few other ones, I actually felt a lot better. Hearing those stories, whether they are true or not, made me feel like I had someone to relate to and someone that was like me. The summer before my sophomore year in high school, my cousin Travis moved in with my family on our farm. At first, I was kind of jealous of Travis. He was spending more time with my father than my siblings and I. He seemed to know my father more than I did. I actually held a grudge for a little bit there until Travis knocked on my bedroom door one night and asked if we could have a talk. That talk lasted through the night and went right into the following morning. And by the time he left my room for some shut-eye, I climbed into my bed and stared up at the ceiling while my mind wandered off. I hated myself for even being jealous of Travis in the first place. Travis and I had established that we were very similar in many different ways. I didn't allow myself to see him like that because of my jealousy. After that late night chat, Travis and I formed a bond. I no longer saw him as a cousin. He got a promotion. He was officially my big brother, whether he liked it or not. Travis and I spent a lot of time together that summer. We shared our thoughts and views on life, our dreams and wishes for our future, and on occasion, we gave each other advice, even if we didn't need it or want it. I turned 16 years old that summer. Travis bought me a cute card and a stuffed animal. I thought it was the sweetest thing ever, but I also told him he didn't have to do that. He responded back with he wanted to because I was important to him. Now, I wrote him a letter the night of my birthday, thanking him for everything. I told him how much he meant to me. I told him that I saw him like a big brother. I told him how much I loved him. And when I was done writing, I folded that letter and placed it into an envelope. I labeled that envelope with his name in big, bold lettering and placed it on our kitchen table. I never saw that letter again after that. There was so much change happening in my life at that time, and I was struggling with it all. I felt like I was annoying Travis with all of my shit, but he never stopped me from talking his ear off. He listened to all of the issues that I had that are like benign right now, and help me figure it all out for the most part. Most of it was about boys, how I didn't fit in, how I looked quite nerdy, and school. I mean, there was a new, huge school that was built that we were going into, and I was terrified of it. The entire time, I was talking his ears off, which I do to everybody else in my life anyway. It was all about petty shit. I never stopped talking so he could vent. I knew he was going through some shit, but I never followed up with him. I was too caught up in my own shit. I knew Travis was in love with a woman and her ex-boyfriend didn't approve of it at all. I knew he was being threatened by that man and his friends. I knew Travis was drinking more than he normally had. I knew he was also in denial of just how much he was drinking and how much danger he was putting himself in and others. And this is where I felt like I failed him. Just a few weeks after I celebrated my 16th birthday, Travis tragically died in a one-vehicle car accident due to drinking and driving. That was the first time in my life I had lost someone I loved so dearly. That was also the first time I ever saw my dad cry. I had a hard time getting by on a daily basis after losing Travis. I had so many unanswered questions for him, but the biggest one being, did he ever get my letter or read it? Because I wanted to know if he knew how much I loved him, how much I cared about him, how I saw him as a big brother. I wanted to know it all. I still don't know if he did to this day. I just wanted to know if he knew how much he mattered to me. Any farmer knows no matter what happens in life, the chores still need to be done and the cows still need to be milked. My father had turned the volume up on the radio a little bit more than usual one particular night while we were milking cows. I could tell he was having a difficult time and wasn't in the mood for any chit-chat. Let's be honest here, it was like a week or so after Travis had died. And also, my father, he was always a man of a few words, kind of like my husband. So, music and cows it was. We were about halfway done with milking when the radio started playing a song that I knew very well. It was Travis's favorite song, Higher by Creed. I stopped what I was doing immediately and looked towards the barn radio. I couldn't believe it. There he was. Travis. He was standing in the middle of the barn alley, jamming to his song with his air guitar, and the mullet my mother cut off before he left us was back, and it was flowing in the air as Travis moved around. I didn't want to stop watching him. He looked so peaceful and happy. I was afraid if I looked away, he would disappear. But I heard a noise from my father's area and looked to see what it was. And it was my father. He had dropped something. And he was standing very still, staring at the very same spot I was where Travis was dancing. My father even looked like he had seen a ghost. But before I could say or ask him anything, my father looked at me and shook his head back and forth in disbelief, then went right back to work. I am not sure if my father saw anything that night, and I am not sure if my father would even tell me if he did. But I will say he looked like he saw the same thing I did. I never really paid attention to the lyrics of that song, Higher by Creed, until after Travis's death. And I find it very strange that his favorite song right before he died was about going to heaven. I know what I saw that night in the barn, and I would like to think it was Travis's way of telling me he was okay. And that is all I needed. A few weeks before my due date for my fourth child, my husband at the time, soon to be ex-husband in the future, John and I got an opportunity to relocate. I wasn't exactly too thrilled with the whole idea. Listen, I could barely get dressed by myself or bend down to tie my own damn shoes because I was so pregnant. Packing up all of our belongings while being outnumbered by toddlers and carrying around what felt like 100-pound weight on my front end was the very last thing I wanted to do. However, living in a jacked up trailer house that was way too small for my ever growing family, that just so happened to be right across the driveway from my parents' house, wasn't something I wanted to entertain anymore, anyways. To be fair, I never really wanted to entertain the whole let's rent a trailer house from my parents in the first place, due to the toxic relationships that we had with the family. But my housing options were extremely limited at the time. And honestly, I was raising 3 toddlers in diapers and had another one in the oven for another few weeks. No sane person would have wanted to rent a place to me during that stage of my life. John's younger brother had purchased an old brick building that was converted into an apartment building at one point in time. And he had a couple apartments available for rent. The building was very old and it needed a lot of TLC. But our rent was decent. It was actually cheaper than what my parents were charging us. And my parents, they weren't across that driveway. All up in my business. So I saw the opportunity as a win-win situation. Wouldn't you? Shortly after we moved in and got a little settled in, I started to sense something was off. Like the energy or something like that. Now, I'm not one of those people that like the energy of the moon or whatever. I'm not into that. But like it honestly felt off. I constantly felt like someone was watching my every move and or following me wherever I went. I had plenty of little ones running around me most of the time, so I always thought it was one of them. But whenever I glanced in that direction, I felt the energy coming from, I would see absolutely nothing. At times, I even heard footsteps behind me, right next to me, or running around all over the place. I kept telling myself over and over that all I was experiencing was all because of my sleep deprivation. I had a newborn at the time and 3 toddlers. It seemed like there was more activity happening at night though. And I could never find an explanation for any of it. I was getting in and out of bed constantly because it sounded like our little babies were throwing a damn party after dark. The sound of laughter and toys being played with echoed throughout our apartment. And every single time I stormed my postpartum ass into their bedroom, ready to face whatever chaos our babies were making, I would find our little ones fast asleep, all tucked into their beds. Not a single toy in sight. Now, because this happened way too often, I started standing in their room for a few minutes before I went back to my bed. I would stare each one of our children down, hoping one child would open their eyes and laugh because they just pulled a prank on me. But that never happened. Instead, all of that cute laughter that dragged me out of the bed in the first place disappeared the minute I entered their room. Every single time. It was confusing as fuck. Then there was the sad woman. I heard a woman crying uncontrollably from a distance many different times while I lived in that apartment. The first time I heard her, I was on our back porch smoking a cigarette in the middle of the night. We lived near a bar, so my only thought was a woman from the bar was outside crying her eyes out. It broke my heart just hearing her cry. I mean, I could actually feel her pain. I yelled out to her asking if she was okay because I could feel that pain. But the woman didn't answer back to me. She just continued crying. That was until my hand wrapped around the handle of the door to our apartment building. As soon as I did that, I didn't hear the woman anymore. The night air that had just felt super heavy had instantly become calm. I stood there holding the door for a few seconds, waiting to hear something. Literally anything, because that woman couldn't have stopped crying the way she was with a snap of the fingers. I am woman. I know this. I cried enough in my life. It was as if the crying woman vanished into thin air once I started to enter our building. I mentioned that woman to John, and he told me that he actually had heard a woman crying the night before. So we both assumed it was probably, maybe, possibly one of our neighbors just going through a hard time. I wanted to believe that theory, but there were way too many odd and random things happening around us. One morning, I was changing my daughter's diaper on our living room floor. I was elbows deep in her shit, nowhere near the kitchen. And John, who was in the kitchen making his breakfast, started freaking out on me out of nowhere. How many times do I have to tell you to shut these damn cupboard doors? I'm taller than you, and I hit my forehead on these damn doors every single day. I was changing a diaper, a dirty ass diaper when this happened. How could I have snuck in there without him seeing me and opened the cupboard door hard enough to hit him in the face? Didn't make sense to me. Made sense to him, I guess. No matter how many times I denied being the one that was keeping the doors open or how many times we fought over it, John strongly believed I was doing it intentionally, just to torture him. Now, if I were in his shoes, I would believe the same thing because it did happen a lot more than it should have. Now, John wasn't exactly saying the nicest things to me while he stood in front of our kitchen cupboards one morning. He was stirring his morning coffee up while continuing to insult me. I started to get really upset, to the point of almost crying, when out of nowhere, the cupboard door that was right in front of John swung open with a little force behind it and smacked him right in the head. Pretty damn hard, too. It took us both by surprise. John stood there, silent for once, in complete shock, and I'm assuming some sort of pain. And I went from almost crying because of him to laughing my ass off because he got what he deserved from someone watching over me, I guess. I just wanted to add a little fun fact here. Well, maybe two. Fun fact number one. Those cupboard doors had a latch to them. So whenever they were shut, the only way to open them back up was by unlatching them. So you couldn't just swing them open like you can with most cupboard doors nowadays. Fun fact number two. John was constantly hitting his head on the doors. Well, then maybe he should have looked before putting his head into harm's way. Just saying. And anyone who knows me knows that I have a small case of the OCDs. My home is my biggest OCD. It didn't matter how many children I had or how old they were. My house was and still is always clean. I can't handle my home not being in some sort of order. So leaving a cupboard door open would drive me nuts now, and it sure as hell did back then. As much as I would have loved to hit John in the forehead with the corner of the cupboard doors, after all the bullshit I was going through with him at the time, I promise you, I wasn't bold enough at the time to try. Not to mention, I wasn't in the area whenever it did happen. There was a time when John and I were fighting in our living room, and somehow during our fight, every single cupboard door had opened up when we were the only ones in the apartment. That's when my OCD actually came in handy. There was a pattern. I noticed a pattern. Whenever there was any negative energy, those cupboard doors opened. Whenever John was near them and was being a dick, he got smacked in the head. I wasn't sure what the hell was going on, but hey, it wasn't hurting me. Halloween night was like any other night to us. Our children went to bed and laid there, and I laid there waiting for all of their moms while I read a book. The kids didn't give me a run for my money that night, so I actually got to fall asleep. Around 11:30 to midnight-ish, a very loud sound woke my ass up. It sounded like a gunshot had gone off from inside of our apartment. John and I instantly jumped out of bed. I ran straight for my children's room. I was honestly afraid of what I might find after hearing that noise. John was frantically going all over the place, looking for whatever or whomever made that noise. The apartment, oddly enough, looked exactly like it did when we all went to bed earlier that night. And thankfully, our children were fine. They were just a little scared because of the noise. John's brother, our landlord, heard the gunshot noise as well. His apartment was directly below us. So he came running up to our apartment to see what the hell was going on. As he quickly opened our apartment door, the kitchen lights reflected off the window on the door at just the right angle, exposing the true culprit. Our storm door window was ruined. There was an actual fist mark in the middle of that window and a spider web-like pattern surrounding it. The entire window was fucked. It looked like someone had punched our storm door window from the inside of our apartment. Shortly after that Halloween night, we had found out that the empty lot that was right next to our apartment building had burnt down on a Halloween night. 2 males, 1 female, and a child perished in that fire. And that's where it kind of clicked. The child spirit had to be the one running around our apartment, playing with all of our children's toys and giggling, making me feel like I was losing my goddamn mind. The woman had to be the one that we heard crying. And one, if not all of these spirits, were trying to protect me by whacking my ex-husband, now ex-husband, in the forehead with our cupboard doors. Now, I know this sounds crazy. Hell, even saying it out loud kind of makes me feel stupid. But all of this happened. I was there. So, that's what it is, yeah. When I was a member of my high school band, I had learned to play taps. Taps is a melody played at the U.S. military funerals and memorials. It's a lights out signal to soldiers that dates all the way back to the American Civil War. When my grandpa found out I was learning how to play taps, he got excited. A little too excited, if you ask me. My grandpa was a sergeant in the Korean War. So that meant when he died, he would have a military service at his funeral. Grandpa begged me to bring my trumpet whenever I stayed overnight at their house, just so he could hear me play taps. He would have me sit on the couch by his feet and play for him over and over. And every single time I played the first note, his arm would rise up and he saluted to the melody with his eyes closed. as if he were saluting to his fellow soldiers. Grandpa's face would turn red at times, or he would shed some tears. He always, and I mean always, told me he was proud of me. He was honored to have me play for him. One weekend he kind of took me by surprise and he told me I was playing taps at his funeral. He didn't ask me. He told me. I flat out told him I couldn't. But he kept insisting. He didn't want it any other way. He had heard me play, and that's what he wanted to leave this earth hearing. I knew I was going to lose the battle, so I caved in to make him happy, and I told him I would. We pinky swore on it. 5 years later, our family was told Grandpa had terminal cancer, and he really didn't have much time left. I took full advantage of the time I had with him and told him how much I loved him and would never forget the time we shared together. He heard me. He raised his hand up, that was shaking uncontrollably, and stuck his pinky out. He wasn't saying a word. And then he reminded me on his deathbed that we had a pinky promise. I knew what he was getting at when he put his pinky out. I just locked my pinky with his and kissed his cheek as we said goodbyes. A few weeks later, he had passed away. Our family was sitting in the funeral home planning out his service. I wasn't going to say anything about the pinky promise because I honestly was so overwhelmed with my emotions. I wasn't sure if I could even play. I hadn't played the trumpet since high school. So I just sat there, kind of stuck in my own world, listening to the family members voice their opinions. My grandma, who was a hot mess at the entire time, which she had every right to be, got up from her seat and blurted out, "Angela is playing taps." He begged her. She promised him. They pinky promised on it. All of the doubts that I had floating around my head left as soon as I heard my grandma's voice. I didn't want to live with any regrets. And I saw how sad Grandma was. I didn't want to make it worse. So I cried out, "I'm playing!" He had me play so many times for him and saluted every single time. I'm playing because he begged me and I pinky promised him. The family members, as much as they wanted to bicker about it, said nothing. Grandma worked out the details with the funeral home against their wishes. And I was told I was able to keep my pinky promise. I wasn't sure if I was going to sound good. I wasn't sure if I was even going to make a note come out of the damn trumpet. I was only sure of one thing. The soldier that was standing next to me during my grandpa's service was not going to play taps for my grandpa. I made sure the soldier knew I promised my grandpa. The soldier was super nice and kept reminding me that if I needed help, all I had to do was tap the side of his leg. The military men told me where to stand, what to expect, and when to start playing. I can't express how much I was shaking and crying while I stood among these soldiers. Some had flags, some had guns, and some were there for support. I was the one with a trumpet, kind of in the middle of these brave men, feeling incredibly proud to be a part of the whole experience, but incredibly sad that my grandpa wasn't there to see it. Grandpa's casket had an American flag draped beautifully over it, and it made its way towards me and the soldiers. Grandma followed right behind it, and she was being held up by two of my uncles. It was hard enough trying to stay calm for Grandpa, but seeing my grandma like this made it 10 times harder. I didn't want to let her down. I started to feel like I was having an outer body experience. And before I knew it, I got a signal from the military soldier. It was my time. I slowly lifted my trumpet up to my lips. My body felt like it was paralyzed. I couldn't feel any of my freaking limbs. I was about ready to tap the soldier's leg so that he could play for me. But something beautiful happened. When I looked at my grandpa's casket with my trumpet still up to my lips, I immediately felt calm. My whole body went from shaking and trembling to this very relaxed state. And that's when I saw him, my grandpa. He was standing next to his casket in full uniform, and he looked so handsome. He was saluting me with the smile like he had many other times. The notes for taps started coming out of my trumpet without any effort. I stared at my grandpa the entire time. I played that melody with my whole heart and soul. When the last note faded into the air, my grandpa had faded as well. I put my trumpet down and I looked at my grandma. She blew a kiss at me and later told me he would have been proud. I already knew he was, because he was there for it. That wasn't the last time I saw or heard from my grandpa. Several years after he had passed away, I was at a very low point in my life. I was in my garage crying for what felt like hours and battling the suicidal thoughts I was having. And then I heard, "Angie, baby." He was the only one that ever called me Angie, baby. And actually, after he died, I started going by Angie just so I could hear that name because he was the only one that said it. When I heard Angie, baby, I stopped what I was doing and looked towards the sound. My grandpa was standing in my garage, smiling at me. I again got that calm feeling. It flowed throughout my entire body, making me feel a lot better. Those suicidal thoughts I had were gone. He winked at me as he made a kiss sound. Like he did whenever I went to kiss his cheek, he would, and he was gone. I got up, brushed myself off, and went into our house to lay down. My grandpa saved me that night. There are many times throughout the years where my grandpa came to me in my dreams. All of the dreams felt so realistic, and they were all very similar. Grandpa would sit at my side near my feet and rub my leg. He would tell me everything is going to be okay. You will be okay. She will be taken care of. It was comforting just to see him and even hear him, but it was also sad. I knew he was talking about my grandma. He knew how close we were. Those dreams happened more often right before Grandma passed away. And then once she passed away, those dreams stopped. I had never seen him since. I always thought I was crazy for being able to see things, to the point of asking my psychiatrist if I was losing it. I mean, if I have a psychiatrist who's prescribing me medication, I am already crazy on paper. So why not add the idea of seeing spirits? But my psychiatrist quickly asked me if I believed in the paranormal, and I told her I did. And believe it or not, she said the same thing my grandma did. I had a special gift. That didn't mean I was losing my mind or even considered crazy for believing in the paranormal. I'm just gifted. If you have any ghost sightings or stories you were willing to share, hop onto my Facebook page, Chaotic Harmony, and tell me all about it. I want to hear about it. And maybe other people can chime in in the comments. I'd love to hear from others that are just as gifted as I am. And after you're done with that, do me a huge favor. Embrace the weird and make normal feel boring. Bye!